Welcome to Chapter 6, Affirmative Action, Family Style. In this chapter, we'll explore the hidden ways money shapes family dynamics. You'll learn why parents often give more to the children who struggle, how this creates resentment among siblings, and why subsidies can weaken families instead of strengthening them. By the end, you'll see that the true legacy of wealth isn't in handouts, but in teaching independence across generations. Family economics behind closed doors. Every family tells a story, not just through words but through money. How parents choose to share or withhold financial resources from their adult children reveals unspoken priorities, hidden expectations, and sometimes even favoritism. Money is never neutral within a family. It carries meaning, shaping relationships, choices, and identities. In their study of Millionaires, Stanley and Danko uncovered a fascinating reality. While many families believe they are helping their children equally, the truth is often far more complicated. What happens behind closed doors of wealthy households is a quiet form of affirmative action, not in politics, but in family economics. Affirmative action, family style, refers to the tendency of parents to direct more financial support toward children they perceive as less successful. On the surface, this seems logical. Why would a wealthy parent give extra money to a son or daughter who is already thriving when another sibling is struggling to stay afloat? But here lies the paradox. By doing so, parents may unintentionally reinforce weakness rather than build strength. Imagine two siblings. One is disciplined, works hard, saves diligently, and gradually builds wealth. The other spends recklessly, lives above their means, and often asks for help. Which child is more likely to receive parental subsidies? Time and again, the answer is the second one. Parents, moved by compassion, step in to rescue the struggling child, funneling money into their lifestyle. Meanwhile, the responsible sibling may receive little or nothing, left to wonder why their good habits seem to be penalized rather than rewarded. This dynamic can create powerful tensions within families. Resentment grows as disciplined children feel overlooked, while dependent children become accustomed to rescue. Parents rarely set out to create this imbalance, but their choices often send unintended messages. If you are responsible, you're on your own. If you are careless, we'll step in. Over time, this pattern can erode not only finances but also family harmony. Millionaires who avoid this trap often adopt a different philosophy. They believe that fairness does not mean equal checks, it means equal opportunities. They might fund education for each child or provide modest seed money for a first home or business, but beyond that, they let each child chart their own path. By refusing to disproportionately reward recklessness, they reinforce discipline and independence. Their children understand that success will be self-made, not parent-subsidized. But in families where affirmative action is practiced, the impact on dependent children is rarely positive. Instead of motivating them to improve, subsidies often cement bad habits. Why work harder if parental help will always be there? Why cut back expenses when new checks will arrive next month? What begins as compassion ends up enabling irresponsibility. Millionaires understand this risk, which is why they resist the urge to continually rescue. The hidden irony is that parents often believe they are protecting family harmony by helping the weaker sibling, when in reality, they may be sowing seeds of division. The responsible children quietly take note, feeling that discipline is undervalued. The dependent child, meanwhile, internalizes dependency as normal. Both outcomes weaken the family, creating dynamics that may persist long after the parents are gone. Family economics, then, is not just about money, it's about values. Every dollar given carries a message. Millionaires know this, and they are deliberate in what their money communicates. They use it to reinforce independence, reward discipline, and provide opportunities for growth. They are careful not to create unspoken favoritism that rewards weakness. So while affirmative action may be debated in society, in wealthy households it plays out in subtle but powerful ways. Families that fall into the trap often weaken their children. Families that avoid it, however, pass down something much greater than wealth, the confidence to build lives on their own. When help hurts, parents often believe that giving extra support to struggling children is an act of compassion. They see one child thriving and another falling behind, and they feel an almost irresistible pull to level the playing field. They reason that their successful child doesn't need help, while their less responsible one can't survive without it. On the surface, this feels like fairness, but the research reveals a harsh truth. This kind of help often does more harm than good. When struggling children are continually rescued, they begin to internalize the idea that someone else will always solve their problems. Bills pile up, a check arrives. Overspent on luxuries, mom and dad will step in. Lost a job because of poor habits, support will cover the gap. Instead of learning resilience, they learn reliance. Instead of facing the consequences of poor decisions, they are shielded from them. What was intended as love quietly becomes a form of sabotage. This is why so many children who receive ongoing subsidies never build wealth on their own. They may live comfortably, sometimes even lavishly, but their comfort is an illusion. Their lifestyles are built on someone else's productivity, not their own. When parents eventually reduce support, whether by choice, retirement, or death, the dependent child is left vulnerable. Without the discipline of financial responsibility, they are unequipped to maintain the life they've grown accustomed to. Millionaires recognize this danger, which is why they are often reluctant to provide endless support. They understand that true compassion means allowing children to face challenges, not shielding them from every difficulty. They know that the sting of a financial mistake can be a powerful teacher, while constant rescue prevents learning. As one millionaire parent explained, "If my kids never fall, they'll never learn to stand on their own." The ripple effects of help extend beyond finances. Families that constantly subsidize struggling children often experience emotional strain. The successful siblings may feel resentment, believing their discipline is ignored while irresponsibility is rewarded. They may ask themselves, "Why do I work so hard if all the help goes to the one who doesn't?" Meanwhile, the dependent sibling may feel ashamed yet unable to break free from the cycle. Parents, caught in the middle, often experience guilt and frustration. What began as an attempt to unify the family ends up dividing it. One story from the research tells of a family where the parents consistently bailed out their daughter whenever her business ventures failed. She became so accustomed to being rescued that she took increasingly reckless risks, knowing safety nets were always there. Her siblings, meanwhile, received little help, despite living responsibly and building careers without subsidies. The resentment grew until family gatherings became tense, filled with unspoken bitterness. The parents, bewildered, wondered why their generosity had fractured their family instead of strengthening it. The deeper lesson is that help must be carefully defined. Assistance that builds independence, such as funding education, providing mentorship, or offering one-time seed money, is very different from open-ended subsidies. The first empowers, the second weakens. Millionaires who build lasting legacies understand this difference. They are willing to give, but they give strategically, ensuring their support produces responsibility rather than dependency. In many ways, the hardest part for parents is resisting the emotional pull. It feels natural to shield children from hardship, to prevent them from failing. But millionaires understand that failure, managed wisely, is not destruction, it is instruction. Allowing children to struggle teaches them to adapt, innovate, and persist. These lessons build resilience far more effectively than any check could. So while it may feel like compassion to keep rescuing, the truth is that too much help hurts. Millionaires show us that love is not about erasing every difficulty, but about preparing children to overcome them. True help equips, while false help imprisons. And the difference between the two can shape not only a child's future, but an entire family's harmony. Rewarding discipline, not dependency. In many families, discipline quietly becomes invisible. Parents see the child who saves diligently, budgets carefully, and avoids financial drama as someone who doesn't need help. Meanwhile, the child who spends recklessly or falls into constant crises is viewed as the one who deserves more attention and resources. Without realizing it, parents reward dependency while overlooking discipline. This dynamic, though well-intentioned, creates an imbalance that not only undermines the responsible children, but also weakens the entire family legacy. Millionaires who build lasting wealth resist this pattern. They understand that rewarding discipline is far more effective than rewarding need. They know that good financial habits should be reinforced, not ignored. If one child has demonstrated responsibility, consistency, and independence, that child has earned trust, not less support, but more opportunities. It doesn't mean showering them with gifts. Rather, it means investing where the return will be strongest. Helping the disciplined child build further independence multiplies wealth across generations. The problem with rewarding dependency is that it distorts incentives. The struggling child, consciously or not, may begin to see poor habits as profitable. If overspending brings rescue, why stop? If recklessness draws more attention than responsibility, why change? Parents unintentionally create a system where the wrong behaviors are reinforced. The result is a cycle of dependency that becomes harder to break with each bailout. Consider two siblings from the research. The older brother built a modest business, lived frugally, and steadily accumulated wealth. The younger brother lived beyond his means, often borrowing money and leaning on his parents for support. Over the years, the younger brother received far more financial assistance than the older, including direct cash gifts, bailouts for failed ventures, and even help covering everyday bills. The parents justified this imbalance by saying, "He needs it more." But the outcome was predictable. The younger brother never learned responsibility, while the older brother grew quietly resentful. What was framed as fairness became a source of division. Millionaires who avoid this trap often adopt a clear principle: help those who help themselves. They are not indifferent to the needs of their children, but they recognize that the most effective use of resources is to amplify discipline, not dependency. If one child demonstrates strong financial habits, millionaires may be more inclined to help them invest in a business, purchase a home within their means, or expand educational opportunities. Their support becomes an investment in responsibility, not a subsidy for irresponsibility. This approach sends powerful messages. To the disciplined child, it communicates respect. We see your efforts, and we believe in your ability to build further. To the dependent child, it communicates accountability. We love you, but we will not fund habits that weaken you. While these messages may be uncomfortable at first, they establish boundaries that preserve independence. Over time, even the dependent child may come to recognize that the only way to earn meaningful support is through discipline. Parents who fall into the trap of rewarding dependency often face unintended consequences. Resentment between siblings can linger long after the parents are gone, dividing families over perceived favoritism. The responsible children may feel undervalued, questioning why their good choices seem to punish them. The dependent child, meanwhile, may feel betrayed when subsidies eventually stop. Millionaires who reward discipline instead of dependency avoid these fractures. Their families may not always be perfectly harmonious, but they are far less likely to splinter over unbalanced generosity. Rewarding discipline also preserves wealth across generations. When resources are directed toward children who manage them wisely, they are more likely to grow rather than vanish. Millionaires know that wealth is fragile if placed in the wrong hands. Supporting responsible children ensures that the legacy remains intact, multiplying through future generations rather than evaporating through dependency. The broader lesson is clear. Love is not about treating all children identically, but about treating them wisely. Millionaires understand that true fairness is not in equal checks, but in equal chances. And the greatest chance they can give their children is the opportunity to succeed through discipline. By rewarding responsibility instead of need, they build families that are not only wealthier, but also stronger. The sibling divide money does more than pay bills, it shapes relationships. In families where parental support is distributed unevenly, the consequences ripple far beyond bank accounts. Siblings compare, they notice, and they remember. When one child receives consistent bailouts while another is expected to stand alone, resentment often grows. What begins as an effort to help the struggling child can, over time, fracture family bonds. This is the sibling divide created by economic outpatient care, and it is one of the most damaging legacies parents can unintentionally leave behind. The divide often starts subtly. A parent writes a check to help one child through a difficult month. Later, that same child receives help with a down payment or ongoing loans that are rarely repaid. Meanwhile, the more disciplined siblings receive little or nothing. Parents may justify this imbalance by saying, "He needs it more," or "She's not as fortunate." But over time, the children who go without notice the disparity. They may not voice their frustration immediately, but the sense of unfairness grows. like a splinter that never heals. Millionaires are aware of this risk. They understand that money carries messages, and those messages echo through family relationships. By constantly subsidizing one child, parents may unintentionally communicate, "We trust you less, so we rescue you more," while simultaneously telling responsible children, "Your good habits mean you don't deserve help." These messages may not be spoken aloud, but they are deeply felt. The impact becomes most visible during inheritances. When parents pass away, siblings often bring long-buried grievances to the surface. A disciplined child who spent decades building wealth independently may feel bitter if the dependent sibling received years of subsidies in addition to an equal share of inheritance. They may view the estate division as another reinforcement of favoritism, further deepening the divide. Millionaires who avoid this dynamic often plan their estates carefully, seeking not only financial fairness, but emotional fairness. Examples from the research highlight these tensions. One millionaire family had 3 children, 2 self-sufficient, 1 dependent. The dependent child received constant financial help over decades, including assistance with housing, business ventures, and everyday expenses. When the parents eventually passed away and left equal shares to all 3 children, the 2 responsible siblings erupted with anger. They calculated the lifetime of subsidies and realized their dependent sibling had already received more than their fair share. Family unity fractured and lawsuits followed. The parents' intention to create harmony had achieved the opposite. The sibling divide is not inevitable, but it requires foresight to prevent. Millionaires who maintain family unity often adopt a philosophy of equal opportunity rather than equal subsidy. They may invest equally in education or offer each child the same starting amount for a home purchase. Beyond that, they let outcomes depend on each child's discipline. This approach communicates fairness while still protecting the principle of independence. Each sibling understands that opportunities were equal, even if results differ. Parents who fall into the trap of favoritism often underestimate how deeply siblings track fairness. Even small differences can echo for years. A car gifted to one child, tuition paid for another, or ongoing cash flow for a third, all of these details are remembered. Children rarely forget who received what. Millionaires who wish to avoid resentment recognize this truth and strive to create transparency. They may even explain their philosophy openly, ensuring that all siblings understand the reasoning behind financial decisions. At its core, the sibling divide is about respect. Children who feel overlooked or undervalued interpret financial choices as reflections of love. They may not need the money, but they crave the recognition that their discipline matters. Millionaires who acknowledge this truth avoid many pitfalls. They remind their children that love is not measured in subsidies, and that fairness lies not in equal gifts, but in equal faith in each child's ability to thrive. So while economic outpatient care may seem like a family issue confined to bank statements, its true impact runs far deeper. It shapes bonds, memories, and identities. Millionaires who resist uneven subsidies protect not only their wealth, but also their family's harmony. They understand that money can either build bridges or dig trenches, and they choose to build bridges. The legacy of dependency. When parents provide constant financial support to one or more of their children, they often believe they are helping only in the present. But the truth is, those choices echo into the future. Dependency does not stop with one generation. It becomes a legacy. Children who grow accustomed to subsidies not only struggle to break free themselves, but they also risk passing the same habits and expectations to their own families. What starts as generosity today can quietly shape the destiny of tomorrow. The legacy of dependency often begins with subtle lessons. A child who grows up watching their parents write checks to cover overdrafts or fund extravagant purchases learns that money flows in easily, even when mistakes are made. They internalize the belief that someone else will always step in. By the time they become adults, this expectation is so deeply ingrained that they cannot imagine life without a safety net. When they have children of their own, they unconsciously model the same behaviors, spending first, seeking rescue later. Millionaires who resist this cycle understand that their financial legacy must be more than money. They want their wealth to empower, not to enable. They recognize that the values they pass down are just as important as the dollars in their accounts. For this reason, they focus on instilling habits of discipline, frugality, and independence in their children, knowing these are the traits that sustain wealth across generations. Without them, even the largest fortune can vanish within a few decades. The research uncovered striking examples of this contrast. Some millionaire families who provided endless subsidies saw their fortunes evaporate within a single generation. Their children, accustomed to lifestyles funded by parental generosity, lacked the skills to sustain wealth when the subsidies ended. Inheritance money disappeared quickly, leaving nothing for future generations. Other families, however, deliberately limited subsidies, teaching independence instead. Their children carried those lessons into their own parenting, raising disciplined and financially capable heirs. The difference was not in the size of the fortune, but in the habits it created. The legacy of dependency also undermines self-confidence. Children who receive constant bailouts may secretly doubt their own ability to succeed. Even when they appear comfortable, they carry the nagging question, am I truly capable, or am I only standing because my parents hold me up? This doubt erodes ambition, discouraging risk-taking and innovation. Millionaires who resist subsidies spare their children this burden, allowing them to discover their strength through effort rather than gifts. Parents who fall into the trap of creating dependency often underestimate how hard it is to undo. Once a child has lived for years on subsidies, it is painful to cut them off. The child feels abandoned, the parents feel guilty, and relationships strain under the weight of unmet expectations. The longer the pattern persists, the harder it is to break. Millionaires who avoid the cycle often do so by setting boundaries early, making it clear from the start that adulthood means independence. And while opportunities may be given, ongoing support will not be. The true legacy of wealth, then, is not measured in checks or inheritances, but in capacity. A child who inherits independence inherits something that cannot be squandered. A child who inherits dependency, however, inherits a weakness that can last a lifetime. Millionaires know this, which is why they guard against economic outpatient care with such vigilance. They want their children to build, not to wait for others to build for them. So while subsidies may feel like love in the present, their echoes tell another story. They shape habits, weaken resolve, and create generational dependency. Millionaires remind us that the greatest inheritance is not money at all. It is freedom. Freedom to succeed, freedom to fail, and freedom to know that the strength to rise comes from within. Choosing a different path. Every parent faces a crossroads when it comes to wealth and children. On one side lies the path of constant rescue, subsidies, bailouts, and attempts to smooth every hardship. On the other side lies the path of discipline, firm boundaries, equal opportunities, and the belief that children must ultimately stand on their own. Millionaires who sustain wealth across generations almost always choose the second path. They know it is harder in the short term, but infinitely more rewarding in the long run. Choosing a different path requires courage, because the urge to protect children from struggle is deeply human. It is painful to watch a child wrestle with financial hardship, to see them drive an old car while peers enjoy new ones, or to watch them rent modestly while friends purchase bigger homes. Parents may feel tempted to step in, to erase the discomfort with a check. But millionaires who resist this temptation understand that discomfort is often the soil in which strength grows. By allowing their children to experience struggle, they are not withholding love. They are cultivating resilience. This doesn't mean millionaires are cold or indifferent. Many provide significant support, but they do so with intention. They fund education, knowing that knowledge compounds across a lifetime. They may help with a first home, but only when their children have saved diligently and proven responsible. They might provide seed money for a business, but they expect detailed plans and accountability. In every case, the goal is not to rescue, but to empower. They treat support as an investment in independence, not as a subsidy for dependency. One powerful lesson from the research is that the path parents choose today often determines whether wealth survives tomorrow. Families who practice constant rescue frequently see fortunes vanish within a generation. Children raised on subsidies lack the skills to preserve wealth, and by the time inheritance arrives, it is quickly consumed. Families who choose discipline, however, pass down habits that sustain prosperity. Their children may not inherit as much in immediate comfort, but they inherit the capacity to build and rebuild. That is the kind of wealth that endures. The path of discipline also fosters harmony. When parents set clear boundaries and apply them consistently, siblings are less likely to feel resentment. Each child knows the rules are the same. Opportunities exist, but responsibility is expected. This clarity reduces the sibling divides and hidden grudges that often poison family relationships. Millionaires who communicate their philosophy openly avoid much of the bitterness that subsidies create. Their children may not always agree, but they understand. And understanding is a foundation for respect. The greatest gift of choosing the path of discipline is the confidence it instills. Children raised without constant rescue learn that they are capable. They discover that setbacks can be overcome, that hard work produces results, and that independence brings dignity. This self-belief is priceless. It allows them to step boldly into life, knowing their security is built on their own effort, not on someone else's wallet. In contrast, children raised on subsidies often carry a quiet insecurity, fearing they cannot stand without support. Millionaires choose to give their children confidence rather than comfort, because they know confidence lasts longer. In the end, choosing a different path is about redefining love. Love is not about removing every obstacle. It is about preparing children to climb. Love is not endless subsidies. It is the gift of independence. Millionaires who embrace this truth may sometimes feel harsh in the moment, but their children eventually recognize the wisdom. And when those children grow into adults who thrive on their own, they see clearly. The greatest inheritance they received was not money, but strength. That wraps up Chapter 6, Affirmative Action, Family Style. In the next chapter, we'll uncover the surprising link between occupations and wealth and why some of the highest earners don't always end up the richest. Don't miss Chapter 7, Find Your Niche, and remember to subscribe so you don't miss the journey ahead.